brilliant. So you saw the film last night. Was that the first time you'd seen it?
No, it was about the 9th time I've seen it, which is an absolute record for me on any movie of mine.
What's it like to have to watch that 9 times? Do you feel like...
I don't have to, that's the thing, I don't have to. I'm choosing to because it's so fun seeing audiences see this movie. It's fun seeing audiences see a comedy, but it's especially fun seeing them see a surprising comedy that they weren't expecting. That's really nice.
Hear the bits they laugh at that they didn't think they were.
And you can sort of feel them go, oh, this isn't what I thought was going to happen. So it's lovely.
And, you know, I spoke to you a bit at the premiere last night, and you mentioned that you were able to call Whit and be like, oh, could we put this bit in the book? I think that'll really suit my character. Is that kind of collaborative relationship something you look for with a director, or is that like specific to you and Whit and your dynamic?
No, I mean, I think I've been very lucky. I find that most of the time, I mean, obviously it has to come from the director. You can't just start giving them notes and sending them, you know. I think Whit said to me, can I have your notes on the script, please? And I was like, okay. And then sent lots because it was such a wonderful novella. It was, and you know, I went to Oxford and I know how to do homework. So that's sort of one of the few things I know how to do. So I did some homework and sent it to Whit. But I find that on the whole, in my experience, directors who have written the script are much more free with it, weirdly, in terms of taking other people's ideas. I don't know why that is particularly, but he's an interesting creature.
Well, I was going to ask, obviously you guys worked together towards the beginning of your career. Coming back and working with him again, did you ever notice things that you've picked up during your career, like how you approach a script different or your time on set?
Because of which?
Kind of just revisiting was like the same way if you revisit an essay when you first write it, when you do like 3 years later, like, God, I've learned so much.
Yeah, I mean, I was very much kind of out of my depth in the first time I worked with Whit because it was sort of early in my career, but more than that, it was the first time I'd played an American. I'd never done an American accent before, and I'd never spent very much time in America either, so I was just sort of quite generally anxious about being in New York by myself for that long and not knowing anyone. And also, his movie was sort of about this very specific milieu of people that was his life and that he was very familiar with, and I wasn't at all. So I was quite anxious about kind of being a foreigner and everything, and that was extremely different this time. But I had kind of learned, I work differently. I sort of have much more of a system of how I work. It was a bit more kind of like, oh, you know, I've just started, help, you know, it's a bit like that. So there's definitely a difference, and I think, you know, obviously having worked with Whit twice, you're more familiar with the way he works as well, which is quite cool.
Would you say you prefer it working with a director you've worked with before?
I mean, not necessarily prefer it. I'd work with Whit all the time. I would quite happily work with him on every project he does, which it feels like I almost have, but it's just he's taken some quite long gaps.
And, you know, the film, it's so funny, and that comes from the book itself, but also it comes from every actor's adaptation of their character. Yeah. What was that like on set to work with?
It was wonderful. I mean, it was a very, very quick shoot, and I think everybody felt the pressure of not wanting to be the person that kind of capsized this very finely balanced, precious thing that we were all doing. I remember the read-through, the table read when we first started, everybody being quite nervous, and then Tom Bennett, who plays James Martin, couldn't be there, and so he was coming in on Skype. And that can often be a little bit alienating for the actor that's not there and it doesn't really feel like they're present, but he sort of turned up with this complete performance of this buffoon that was so funny already on Skype, and that kind of broke the ice really for everybody. It was a really nice moment.
Did you ever have any problems with corpsing on set?
Only with him. I mean, a bit with him. And I had a terrible time during the dance, because one, I find men doing hoppy dancing funny anyway, and two, I'd not been able to spend time with the dance teacher because I was always on set, so it was like chaos and funny, and laughing and dancing in a corset is a quick way to die. So there was a risk that I wasn't going to make it through that scene.
I'm glad you did.
Thank you, me too, thanks.
Do you think it's ever a struggle when you're doing something like Austen to maintain that kind of upper-class mannerism that's so essential for the success of the film?
Not really. I didn't find it really, because all her speech and her bearing and everything just felt very kind of complete, you know. So no, the corset is a bit of a nightmare to wear every single day. I was glad to take that off. It was always such a like, oh, you get it off at the end of the day.
I guess it's kind of something it'd be quite nice to bring back with you, the way they speak, in a way, that like dry humour.
Yeah, and also the letter writing, I think that's one thing that's quite sad too, that it's so nice that we can all be so immediately in touch, but looking over old letters is pretty sad that we don't get to do that so much now.
And finally, I just wanted to ask, at the premiere yesterday you were talking a little bit about a screenplay you were starting to write.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we could hear anything about that. Like,
I mean, I'm writing with another writer, who's an English woman called Emma Forrest. And yeah, we're writing that together. It's sort of about a fairly monstrous mother, actually, and her daughter, which we've been doing this for a few years, so that began pre this. So.
brilliant. Well, I can't wait to see it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you. Thanks.